Greetings and salutations, ladies, menfolk, and all other viewers out there. Welcome to another episode of Game Break, an ongoing series where me and my crew play some video games. I am coming to you today with World End Economica. Let's see, last time round... What did we do last time round? It's been a little while. I think we had dinner, and that was about it. I don't think we did anything after dinner. I don't think we even went to bed yet. Let's see here. May 12th. It wasn't that long ago, but yeah, I forget what happened. So let's dive right back in, shall we? While rubbing my shins, I was wondering whether she didn't want me to talk about it. Couldn't figure out exactly what would make her want to avoid that at all costs.
What? Did something happen?
Oh, right, this guy's the low voice. Ow. Well, there was that. As I was about to begin, Hagana glared at me. However, Lisa held Hagana back with her arms. And with that, Hagana looked like she was about to cry. I was surprised that Hagana would be so against my telling the story, but it appeared Lisa wasn't so. I could see it from Hagana's expression. With a light sigh, Lisa looked at me with a tired expression.
Mr. Toyama came, I guess.
Toyama?
He didn't come here to collect on a debt?
Hagana tried her best to stop Lisa, but once those words came out, the strength left her as if the end of the world had come. He sure did. And did you know... I was about to detail the ruckus that happened after I got back to the church, but then my eyes met Hagana's. Those eyes were filled with supplication. I was more than a little surprised at such a pompous egotist being able to make such a face. Making Toyama fly off the walls had probably happened once or twice before, and I didn't think Lisa had condoned such behavior. My heart wasn't so shriveled as to totally rule out staying quiet after seeing such a humble entreaty from Hagana.
And did I know what?
I took the receipt from my pocket and handed it to the expectant Lisa. I paid off the interest for you, so pay me back later. Staring for a few seconds at the 200 mul receipt she set on the table, Lisa looked at me with a sigh.
So now I owe you now instead.
Much better than that baldy, right? Lisa knew she shouldn't laugh, but couldn't hold back. She then took the receipt.
Well, Mr. Toyama also has a hard time, you know.
Well, it does look kind of unfortunate.
Hey!
It's true. I shrugged off unnaturally at Lisa's remark and worked on the rest of the stir-fry. I knew she had put 200 mules into the cabinet, but when I looked at Lisa's face when she held the receipt, I didn't feel like telling her to get that out. I thought maybe I did something stupid, but if the time came, I could always just ask for her to nullify the rent. I stuffed my stomach full of pork and peppers and belched during my last words. Well, stupid mouse! Stop doing that. 5 minutes, that's not bad. Well, just pay it back when you can. I also owe some favors, too.
Well, if you could put things more appropriately, you'd probably be popular with the girls you know.
Huh. I snickered and drank my tea. I was even a little ashamed of myself for wondering if that's what I was missing.
I'll pay you back soon. Well, how soon would depend on that.
Lisa chuckled weakly, and Hagana was definitely glaring at me after seeing Lisa's expression. She probably thought that I didn't deserve any thanks, but reason didn't really fly with this girl. Thanks for dinner. I paid no heed to Hagana, got up from my chair, and went back to my room. After dark, I continued to watch the news and read up on stocks, puzzling over my avenue of attack for tomorrow, when there was a knock on my door. I figured it must be Lisa, since she'd actually do the proper thing. As expected, her voice came through the door.
Are you asleep?
I'm not a grade schooler, you know.
Well, aren't you kind of like one?
Well, I'd probably look that way from the point of view of an auntie like you. Really?
What? Aunt?
So, what's up? I got a surprising amount of reaction. I figured I'd manage to pay her back for all the time she treated me like a kid. You are a douche. Lisa was about to say something, but muttered it to herself and stated her business.
Got time to come up here?
What? Lisa answered me after looking over at the living room.
At least while Hagana's in the bath.
Well, okay, I guess. Wait a sec. I closed my computer, putting it to password-locked sleep mode, and headed out into the hallway.
You're surprisingly methodical.
A man needs his share of secrets to survive.
Right.
Lisa walked out and I followed her. Using the unreliable light from the diode lamp to guide our way, we headed up the steep stairs. The courtyard I saw during the day was lit by light pouring out of Lisa's room. Lisa invited me into her room. What left me speechless wasn't that her room was all pink and girly. In fact, if that were the case, I would have just laughed my head off before I'd feel any surprise. Lisa's room was a simple room, perhaps a little more crowded than mine, and it came with a bed and a desk. Books. Yay, books. There was a good reason for the cramped feeling, though. There were real books lined up against one of the walls. Are these the real thing?
That's right. They'd fetch a hefty price, too.
Lisa pulled out a chair for me. And then she opened a drawer and took out a small bottle. Ah.
Can you drink, Hal?
For a second, I couldn't figure out who this Hal was until I quickly realized it was me. Perhaps it caught me by surprise, but it felt kind of odd and tingly. You mean alcohol?
Or perhaps you've never had any.
I'm not some loser.
Hee hee.
And I was truly a loser when I proclaimed that. Lisa was really good at making people dance on her palm. Or perhaps I really was a kid after all.
Well, gotta try it to really know it.
She then poured me some into a cheap-looking silvery cup and handed it to me. It was an amber liquid, and the whiff I had of it was quite smoky.
Don't drink it all in one gulp.
Thought I was being treated like a kid again and was about to drink it all down to show her, but she managed to slip some words in before that happened.
I'd like you to savor the flavor.
This woman was truly underhanded. With a sulking face, I gave it a taste and was on the verge of coughing. Well, what did you want to talk about? Or did you just want to booze me up?
Well, it's not really that. There was something else. I wanted to talk about today.
Today?
Yep, when Mr. Toyama came today. What really happened?
Lisa swished the cup in front of her and stared down at it. As I dawdled, Lisa looked back up and continued.
Haganas really can't keep a poker face about things, and, well, you're kind of the same.
Quiet.
But I'm really happy that you covered for her. I guess shaking hands isn't really needed to make up.
Given the smile on Lisa's face as she said this, I could only begrudgingly accept that I was also happy about it. However, I couldn't just candidly say yes to her, knowing full well that I was being childish again. I lowered my voice as much as possible to give my reply. Not even I'm that petty-minded.
Yep, I also believe that you weren't.
Lisa sipped some liquor and swallowed it down gently. When I had drunk some, I felt like someone had shoved a smokestack in my mouth, but the way Lisa drank it was very fitting. This made Lisa irrefutably look like an adult, and me look like a child. However, I didn't think Lisa was doing that to look like an adult or anything. Rather, it appeared she might have been using it to loosen her lips.
So, what happened?
I don't know the details since I came in halfway.
Okay.
But, well, I can imagine what happened. When I returned there was a big commotion. The old geezer was livid, throwing sofas and stuff around on a rampage. And well, that girl was like her usual self.
Hagana.
Hagana was like her usual self, totally angry and belligerent while at the same time trembling.
Sheesh. So what happened then?
And then, I instantly thought it was some burglar, smacked him down, restrained him and shut him up. And while I was listening to the accounts of what happened, I realized that this old guy was probably not at fault. Released him, and then paid off the interest. That's all.
Lisa was staring at the cup for a second.
Lisa was staring at the cup for a second, took another drink as if to drink away a sigh, and then asked me,
So, what about the lilies?
Lilies? Oh, that girl, Hagana told me that there had to be 7, so I got some for her. Wait, how do you know that? Chances are she saw how many lilies were left outside.
Of course I'd know. Where do you think the laundry gets hung out to dry?
Lisa rolled her eyes while asking me that. Oh yeah, I guess they're by the garden with the flower bed on the 3rd level.
Furthermore, the ones in the vase were something given to me, and the ones in the flower bed were ones I grew. I was really depressed that 2 of them had to been uprooted. But when I came down to the living room and saw the dirt-laden roots in the garbage, and the smushed lilies thrown in with them together, well, let's say you don't have to be an Einstein to figure out kind of what happened.
Brilliant deduction. But could I ask something?
What?
Why would Hagana want to hide this incident from you? It's not like it was the first time Hagana had looked down on people and pissed them off. Besides, this Mr. Toyama, or what's-his-face, didn't appear to be some elite guest whom you shouldn't upset at any cost. However, Hagana did everything she could to hide the incident. Or perhaps she was overly concerned about the thing with the lilies and tried to hide everything. While I was pondering such things, Lisa slowly wet her lips with the liquor.
She thinks the debt was her fault.
Oh. Well, the fog lifted on something rather unexpected.
Well, I guess I was originally at fault. I had lost a book I borrowed from the university. I guess it did look like something that belonged in a trash heap, so perhaps that child threw it away. However, even I wasn't totally sure. Besides, I was kind of sloppy with it as well, so of course I couldn't really blame her if it were the case. But she was really set in her beliefs and was really obsessed with that incident.
I see. But, well, you managed to square it away using some money, right?
If you put it that way, it saves me a lot of talking. But it wasn't just a small amount of money, and since we were poor, we had to borrow the money to pay the fine. The banks wouldn't even give us the light of day, so the only people who'd lend us money were locals like Mr. Toyama. He's a good guy. He didn't even ask for collateral when lending us money.
Was he an idiot? The interest was pretty low, too.
What? The interest wasn't that low?
Don't be an idiot. It was quite low. Deposit interest rates at the bank started at around 3%, right? Just storing it at the bank earned you 3% interest, so lending money to some penniless person at 6% with no collateral must have been a sure sign of madness.
I didn't know.
Aren't you an adult? Lisa smiled bitterly at my exasperated exclamation and just shrugged. So, Hagana also knew that guy was an idiot, but how does that turn into a reason to hide the scuffle from you? The dots aren't connecting for me. Lisa chuckled faintly at my words. For a second there, I thought she was trying to dodge the question, so I started to talk again. However, I realized that wasn't the case and clamped my mouth shut. Lisa's smile was quite sad. This was the first time I realized that people can laugh with such a sad face.
I really think I can trust you, Hal.
Huh? What's with all of a sudden?
I'm not trying to flatter you. You can somewhat figure out what people are really like inside after seeing their various aspects. You try to act all mean and stuff, but you are really a good kid instead.
I couldn't get angry at Lisa's serious face, even while I was thinking the whole time that she was making fun of me.
And that's why I'm going to tell you. Got it?
Lisa clung onto the silver-colored cup in her hands as if her life depended on it.
I once got really angry at her for that before.
That?
Got angry at her for Hagana intentionally trying to piss off Mr. Toyama.
I guess that really was the case.
Yep, she would try her best to anger him when I wasn't looking. And furthermore, as you've said, she was actually afraid.
I recounted my memory of Hagana defiantly yelling angrily with her body flush against the wall, the corners of her eyes totally red and her hands trembling.
You know the reason for that?
Nope.
Well, even I didn't know at first. However, when I yelled at her the first time for it, she said this. She said, even if you had no money to pay it back, everything would be solved if you just shipped me off, right?
What?
I guess normally you wouldn't know what that was all about. However, I immediately realized what she meant. When I was back on Earth, such stories were a dime a dozen.
Her reply came as she stared blankly and deeply into her cup. I was assaulted with the premonition of something even worse than I could totally hate. Something worse than dog crap.
She wouldn't tell me her personal story, so this is all just conjecture, but I came to the conviction that she was bought with money.
Oh. You can't be. Before I could finish my sentence, the root of my tongue had frozen completely solid. Many of the folks from my village came from the darkest corners of the earth. There were a lot of cheerful dudes, but I had the feeling they were trying to make up for something. They said there were places on Earth that people from more affluent countries would overlook, even if such places were in said countries. The lunar metropolis was a powerful contraption to extract money from Earth. It was a tool to make money using various methods. So it wouldn't be strange if there existed things like the ones they talked about. In fact, it would be odd if there weren't.
So adopting a talented child wouldn't be a rare occurrence, right? Even if the adopter didn't feel that way, it is quite possible for the adopted to feel that he or she had been bought. Of course, there are such tragedies when children are being bought and sold.
Lisa's tone didn't sound like she was just rambling about the matter. While I considered Lisa quite an annoying woman, I also felt she was someone whose feet were firmly planted on the ground. Lisa probably investigated the matter herself.
Hagana's math talents are truly marvelous. After all, she got full marks on the entrance exam for Lunar City University. She'd probably be able to get a scholarship to the point of having even clothing, food, and lodging being covered by the university. Hagana had to be looking towards that, but she'd definitely not say a word of it. Guess what she's been the most interested in right now? Making money.
A bad taste spread through my mouth. Even if I wanted to have my own beliefs about a person while not knowing anything about that person, having the truth laid bare before me would only naturally incur this reaction.
I think she takes it out on others because of all the pain she endured. If she put all her strength into enduring her pain, she wouldn't be able to control herself.
But a debt is just a debt, and it's not like you couldn't pay it back, right? It's not like that girl would need to sell herself. Not being able to understand exactly what it meant to sell oneself, I felt like I'd said something quite stupid. But Hagana was apparently quite talented, and she didn't look bad either. When push comes to shove, that method of selling would work. Really? We're going down this road? Okay. Not where I saw this story going.
That's right. That's what I wanted to say, but...
Lisa heaved a big sigh and continued drinking. After gulping down one, she roughly poured herself some more.
I'll pay it back. Actually, even right now.
What? I looked at Lisa in amazement, and then I followed up my exclamation. You're gonna sell yourself? Lisa spewed out her liquor and started coughing. Gross.
Sheesh, don't say such bizarre things.
Well, that's kind of how the conversation flowed.
Man, well, it probably wasn't too far off the mark.
Huh?
I do have things to sell, however, they are pretty much a part of me, so I was hesitant of selling them.
Lisa looked up, staring off into space like some precocious child observing the stars for the first time. However, what she was staring at wasn't the far-off nebula, but rather something closer. The bookshelves. After I noticed what she was looking at, she sighed and continued.
It's like you're running away from not wanting to work. I've been trying to avoid the problem. If I sold a few of the books lining these shelves, I'd be able to pay back the loan.
Are they really that awesome? They're books, so yes.
As time passes, the amount of books can't increase. They can only decrease. And in that sense, they are precious. A part of the font of human knowledge rests upon these books. And so in that sense, they are awesome. But...
Stop copying me. Stop interrupting her.
But it's not like life would be harder without them, and so in that sense they aren't that great. But selling them would feel like ripping out a part of my own body.
I still have no clue what you're spouting. Besides, if you sold them, couldn't you just buy them again later?
My problems would be a lot simpler if that were the case.
You can't buy them again?
Books like these aren't ones you'll find anywhere, and they're not books that everyone's going to want. Thus, people who want them are fanatic about them, and once they get their hands on them, it's very rare they'd want to get rid of them. Even on Earth, only a few books of this type exchange hands per year, probably. Therefore, if I put these up for sale, I'd definitely find a buyer, but there's a very good chance I'll never get them back again. And it's not like I'm waiting for them to appreciate and value to sell them. They're more like friends and comrades to me, if you get my meaning.
I felt something from the glimpse Lisa threw at me. Putting comrades up for sale would definitely yield buyers, but once your comrades are sold, you'll never get them back.
And that's why I've been dragging my feet.
If I found an adult dragging their feet on doing something they should be doing, I'd totally want to kick their butt and split on them. However, even with those beliefs, I couldn't bring myself into thinking that in front of Lisa. I could see that Lisa really loved those books like real people who were friends and comrades. The sight of her standing in front of the bookcase, leaning on the bed and speaking absent-mindedly, gave the impression of a girl at her wit's end. And that wasn't something shameful. If this was something that would drive even Lisa to her wit's end, then it must be truly something formidable. And that must be, without a doubt, her love for books. Well, I guess you just have to pay it back bit by bit.
Well, you're right. That's the case, but...
As if to proclaim her return to reality, she let out an adult yet bitter smile and polished off the rest of her liquor in her cup easily.
And you're the same, aren't you? In 20 days, I'll have you find some way to make money.
In 20 days, huh? Revealing no signs about my stock trading, I replied sulkily.
Well, as you can see, I'm really in no position to lecture you. However, I do have one thing to say.
Yeah?
That stuff about Hagana.
Oh, yeah.
I have a wish to ask of you.
What? Like, could you please get along with her because of her sad predicament? Lisa kept mimicking me so much that I decided to mimic her in return. I thought she'd get mad, but getting such moral education stuff pushed on me made me kind of mad too, so we were even. This was the moon after all.
What does that even mean?
Why would you consider loading yourself with baggage if you're going to be flying up?
You got it.
However, Lisa didn't get angry. Instead, she poured herself some more liquor and wet her lips with it.
Actually, it's a little different from wanting you to get along with her. It's possible for people to have disagreements, right?
I think Hagana and I are like that.
That's probably the case. However, when Hagana's glaring down at you, you've stopped instantly doing things in response to intentionally upset her, right?
You got a point there.
That's good enough. What I want you to do is to acknowledge her.
Acknowledge?
Yeah. People's existences are such ephemeral things. Wasn't there that thing from old Fae legends? That the Fae can continue to exist as long as people believed in their existence? Once people forgot about them, then they couldn't continue to exist. Haven't you heard about something similar to that?
Unfortunately, no.
There were tales like that, and it's not just limited to Fae. Anyone would be happy if they got complimented, and having someone worry about you allows you to believe that you are a meaningful existence to them. People can't think of themselves as being human if they're all alone. She's got a point.
No way.
It's true. There's been examples on Earth where someone who grew up with dogs could only think of themselves as dogs. To acknowledge someone is to give a proper response to them, even if that were to be one of disgust.
Lisa took a deep breath and stared at me. It became a bit harder for me to breathe. Lisa had always been caring to me. Deciding to answer her pointless questions was in part because she respected me.
I don't mind if you guys have arguments, and I don't think you guys are such opposites either.
What? Yeah, right.
Well, the one thing I would ask of you the most is,
Lisa cut off my words, stood up from the bed, and held my hands.
Don't ignore her. She has lost all faith in her self-worth. It can't be healthy for someone to think that selling herself would be the way to pay back a debt. I want to say that everyone is equal before the Lord, but before that, I want her to never forget that she is a human being and not just some item. I know that it's the moon, and that the trend here is that anything that can't be turned into money is worthless, but...
Oh, those last words skewered my heart. And I'm sure Lisa saw through to my expression of pain at that moment. Lisa looked at me and chuckled lightly. I tried to hide my embarrassment and thought about lashing back in anger, but it didn't happen. Since at that moment, Lisa embraced me softly. That doesn't look that soft.
Al, you have a good sense of self, and that was definitely because of your parents.
Yeah, right, my parents.
The way they thought were probably totally different, but I believe they must have said things to you to the point where you got sick of it.
I couldn't object because she got it precisely. After all, I left the village because my freaking parents' unmovable convictions made me want to puke.
However, that is in itself the marvelous mark of love. Since if they didn't care about you, they wouldn't do that. And if you didn't have those freaking annoying parents, it would have been very hard to collect your thoughts, right?
I made a clearly bitter face at being mimicked again, and Lisa chuckled after noticing it indirectly. Lisa's breathing lightly brushed my right ear, and it was a ticklish sensation that made me sleepy.
I shelter those who run away from home with no place to go, because I believe they need someone to acknowledge them. In any case, the moon is a busy place, a bustling and stimulating place, like you said, so most people have no time to care about others, right? But I received the Lord's teachings, so I feel like I'd be able to do something like that.
Lisa stepped back and picked up the cup I was holding with the liquor in it.
What do you think?
She posed me the question at the end. I'd totally salute someone who'd be able to refuse at this point. However, much to my chagrin, I didn't understand what Lisa was trying to get across. I didn't want to admit that those annoying parents loved me, even if I were on my deathbed, but I felt like I was able to figure out what I needed to succeed on the moon because of them. It was kind of like teaching me what not to do. And besides, even if their way of thinking was different, it was true that what I learned from those guys in the village helped me many a time. Concern, one's value as a human. The story still felt fishy to me, but at least it seems that Hagana hadn't been leading such a happy life. Thus, at least being a bit kinder to her wasn't all that bad. Besides, whether I argued with her or whatever, as long as I didn't ignore her, it would be fine. I looked back at Lisa and replied woodenly, "I get it." And at that moment, Lisa beamed a warm smile.
Thank you. Well, let's keep what we talked today a secret, okay? And alcohol seems to be a bit too early for you, so don't drink it while I'm not here, okay?
Instead of complaining about her nagging, I resorted to spitting out my breath as if I were clicking my tongue. I realized it was something childish that would get laughed at by Lisa, but I had no choice. Well, I was kind of disappointed after she said thanks to me, and it would have been bad if she found out what I was thinking. I had totally thought that she'd hug me again. Crap, stop it! I'm being an idiot.
Good night.
Her words as she closed the door stuck with me for some time. The next day marked the first rainfall in a long while on the moon. Of course, it wasn't some natural phenomenon, but rain generated on a managed schedule. There were air purification mechanisms all over the place. However, the moon's low gravity allowed dust particles generated from people's everyday living and erosion of buildings to kick up into the air easily. Therefore, washing everything down with some rain was more effective. And so, since morning, water had passed through the conduits, spread along the seams of the dome, and fallen quietly from the sky as rain. Furthermore, the system managed to replicate the feel of a cloudy sky by lowering the visibility. I'd heard that on Earth, sometimes houses would get blown away, or everything would be flooded as far as the eye could see. Meanwhile, on the moon, all we'd get would be the same gentle rain. However, I guess the rain did put a damper on me. It was probably because the rainy days were planned out in advance, and stores were often closed due to the lack of foot traffic in the city. A hush fell over everything. I did some light exercises and then left my room while hugging my computer. The living room was dim, even with the lights on. Lisa and Hagana were in the middle of having some bread.
Oh, good morning.
Hey. With my curt reply, I placed my computer on the table and opened the display. It was still about an hour before the markets opened, but I wanted to check the news.
You sure are some junkie. How many slices of bread do you want?
1 slice.
Just 1 slice? You're a guy, you know. Is that enough?
Okay, then 2 slices. I was only looking at the screen when I answered, and I could hear Lisa muttering complaints about my reply. But she seemed to be having fun, so I didn't really get it. Glancing over sideways at Lisa naturally put Hagana into my field of vision. I felt a little self-conscious after that talk with Lisa yesterday, but Hagana was ignoring me as usual, quietly nibbling on her bread without giving me a glance. Her smooth black hair and her thin fingers felt like artificial creations. Her small black mouth made me wonder if it was even big enough for everyday necessities, and she also had those spunky eyes. Oh my. If you ignored her personality and just judged her by looks, I felt that it certainly wouldn't be odd if there were people who were willing to buy her with money. There's just no good way of phrasing that type of thought. And the moon was filled with people who had that type of money. On average, a working person would be able to make from 2 to 3 million mools in his lifetime. Thus, to buy that girl, 5 million mools would be plenty. This was certainly an amount the people at the head of the pack on the moon would be able to afford. Buying people with money. As a concept, I thought it was actually pretty natural. However, once face to face with someone who was actually involved in the matter, I had a very strange feeling about it, even before mentioning pity.
What?
I snapped back to reality when Hagana cast a suspicious gaze at me. Turned out that I'd been staring at Hagana without realizing it. She stared at me with suspicion for a while, then looked around herself and wiped her mouth. Realizing there was nothing clinging to her mouth, she continued to stare at me suspiciously. There's nothing stuck to it.
I checked before you said anyway.
It was her usual bad-tempered tone, but for some reason I wasn't really pissed off by it. If I calmed down and listened to what she said, it's not like it was anything particularly bizarre. It wasn't like I was going to ignore her, even if I could see Lisa looking at me worriedly from behind Hagana. Hey girl, what's with the black getup all the time? She has a name.
What about it? Is it really any of your business?
I thought that would have been her follow-up, thinking about it calmly though. I wondered if it might be a real question rather than a rhetorical quip. If I placed myself in her shoes, I'd definitely asked something similar if I had just been stared at and then asked about my clothing. I shrugged and said, "Well, I was kind of curious since you always dress the same."
Well, aren't you the same, brat?
Guess I could deal with that answer. At that moment, Lisa, who had been placing toast on the plates, cut in.
Hagana, he's Hal, not brat.
No, he's a brat.
Well, he called me hey girl. Hal.
While spreading butter on her bread, Lisa called my name while jerking her chin slightly in Hagana's direction.
Hagana.
What? Is she trying to train us like dogs? Though, I guess being stubborn would be something only a child would do. I opened my mouth in resignation. "Oh, Miss Hagana, I was just curious as to why you possess clothes which all bear the same appearance." I recalled what I learned in grade school.
Good job.
And Lisa replied like a teacher.
Okay, Hagana.
Lisa turned towards Hagana, and Hagana was surprisingly hesitant. I felt like she had been looking back and forth between my face and Lisa's face at least twice now. The hesitant Hagana was like a little animal that had been squirted with a water bottle. Aw.
Oh, well, you're the same. How? Good, well done.
This was the first time I saw Hagana fumble at words. If not for her spoiled princess demeanor, she had as much emotion as a metallic robot. But with this, she immediately started looking more girlish. I couldn't help feeling that I was just a simple guy. Hagana's looks, at least, were cute.
Well, about the exchange we just had, I do have some opinion of my own.
Lisa said as she handed me a slice of bread, and both Hagana and I looked at her. She cleared her throat and said,
You two, be more conscious about how you're dressed.
Looking over our synchronized eyebrow furrowing, she continued,
Lavish decorations lead to ruin, but going around in rags leads to ruin as well.
It's kind of waste when you can still wear them, though.
Frugality is important, but so is looking proper. Mine aren't rags. Yeah, but you only have one set of those.
Huh? Lisa and Hagana turned together to look at me after my exclamation. Hagana proceeded to repeat herself.
Mine are not rags.
I wrinkled my upper lip.
And they don't stink.
With that line, I became uneasy rather than mad. It's starting to smell again. I lost trust in myself and ended up trying to smell myself. Lisa smiled wryly.
No, you're okay. For now, at least.
Oh, so I was fine all along.
But you stunk before.
Oh, shut up.
Shut up?
My brows were fully wrinkled. Being asked to repeat myself directly ticked me off a bit. As we glared at each other intensely, Lisa tapped her fork on the plate.
Stop it, you two. Besides, both of you only have one set of clothing. That is kind of rare around here.
Lisa cut off our impending butts by continuing to talk.
Hagana, you don't have classes today, right?
Lisa suddenly changed the topic, but Hagana was unfazed and answered immediately.
Yes. And Hal, you're free this evening.
When I got asked, I ended up answering in stupid frankness. Well, if it's after 5... Wait, don't tell me.
That's right. When the rain stops in the evening, the two of you go shop for some clothes. The shopping center on the second block has a ton of inexpensive clothing stores.
Hagana and I looked at each other.
Your answer?
Hagana turned to Lisa when she was asked that, like one of Pavlov's trained dogs. And after turning to Lisa, she made a face, her own way of saying, "Oh shoot." Lisa looked straight back at her and smiled. I guess Lisa's smile was unblockable from the point of view of Hagana, who had supposedly thrown away a precious book of Lisa's, landing the church in a huge amount of debt. Staring down slightly and resigning herself to her decision, she replied in her usual manner.
Yes. What about you, Hal?
If I had said no here, we'd know immediately who was being a child. Furthermore, I was neither boorish nor obtuse enough to be able to stand being called smelly all the time. However, I just couldn't shake the principle of it being unnecessary spending. As I looked over my clothing futilely one last time, Lisa had been looking at me, smiling. At that moment, I realized why Lisa appeared so mature. This woman, with just a smile, was able to display a plethora of emotions. It must be due to being older. I sighed my resignation and replied, "All right, I got it."
Good.
She was smiling happily when she said that. And we're actually going to do a somewhat short episode since this seems to be like a decent little transition point, and we've already hit about 45 minutes. So it looks like next time around we'll actually get some shopping done, and who knows, maybe do some stock trading, see what there is to do about making some money for the church so they can pay down the debt without having to sell books or their bodies. I really hope it doesn't turn out that way, because I would be upset. I don't want the story to go down that road. Or the selling of books for that matter. But we'll find out next time. Thank you all for joining me, and until then, go be creative.